In my 8 years making content for YouTube, I've researched the depths of human cruelty, the heights of compassion, and everything in between. And it's led me to a shocking realization about our true nature. Hi. If I haven't talked about it enough lately, a couple years ago, I had a kid. He's now 2 years old. He has a lot of energy and he's a climber. I made a video a few years ago about how this decision made me pensive about the world. After all, I consider myself a well-informed person. I saw the world for all it was and then decided to add another person to it. And in the midst of many people having big opinions about my life choices on the internet, I've been thinking a lot about my son and humanity. I have a lot of hope and a lot of fear for his future, especially because he stands a decent chance of seeing the 22nd century. In that sense, having a kid makes you see more long-term and deeper ramifications of your actions. Because yeah, not to get too mushy, but when you're holding that little not even 6-pound guy in your arms and know that what becomes of his life has a lot to do with your choices and actions, that 5 pounds and change can get really heavy. And I mean, have you seen the world? The temperature is warming, the standards of living are dropping, and groceries are $200 a week because Galen Weston needs a new helicopter. I literally get threats from enough Nazis and conspiracy theorists that I had to put in extra privacy and security measures for my kid. How could I see all of that and think a new person should see it? I'm also in a pensive mood because, if you didn't know, this is my last step back video as a full-time YouTuber. I'm still gonna make stuff, but I have had to move it back into side hustle status as I find other sources of income, just because life in Canada has become nearly impossible to afford. It's all made me reflect on the last 8 years I've been spending making videos so far for you all and the impact that I've left on people. I wanted to leave something to say what it all means, so that's what we're going to do today. I want to talk about humanity in a big sense, using all the research I've read and my experiences in nearly a decade of making step back videos. I have 4 major takeaways. I think I have a solid idea for the forces that bigger than humanity shape the world and how it works. But I also think I've learned a lot about why people believe or act the way they do and how the concept of the state has shaped the way we react to others, from the big and dramatic to the small and intimate. And with it all, I also think I can make some suspicions about where we're all going. Because despite everything, I think there is something that suggests hope for humanity and purpose in our work. You have, through centuries of capitalist and colonialist propaganda, as well as a grotesque misunderstanding of history, been sold a bill of goods about human nature. So I think to start, we need to go to the very core of what human nature actually is. A lot of the stuff I'm going to say in this section come from Rutger Bregman's book, Humankind, in case you really want to chew on the subject. At the core of the ongoing debate over humanity's innate nature, we often find ourselves revisiting the classic Hobbes-Rousseau debate. You might not even need these ideas introduced, it's so widespread, but Thomas Hobbes had a very popular idea that humans are, at their core, savage beasts who wouldn't even lift a finger to save their own grandmothers from the ravenous bug bladder beasts of trawl without orders, signed in triplicate, sent in, sent back, queried, lost, found, subjected to public inquiry, lost again, and finally buried in soft peat for 3 months and recycled as firelighters. Basically, Hobbes believed that human life was, as he said, nasty, brutish, and short, until we implemented overarching powerful states that use armies and police officers and laws to keep us well-behaved. It was a really popular idea with the elites because it gave them a justification for their own existence, and it's behind the idea called veneer theory, that if the yoke were ever loosened, we'd all just go the purge on each other. The problem is that Hobbes's ideas of humanity are good for explaining elite panic and why we think about the world the way we do on, like, The Walking Dead, but it does so in defiance of actual evidence. See, the world is not like the purge. The world is like the first purge. As Mildred A.K. Thoughtsign pointed out to me, this is the movie The First Purge, not the first Purge movie. In the first purge, as the elites put in an annual state of lawlessness, hoping to use the bloody chaos to thin out the pores, they don't get what they want. The purge just turns into a rowdy party. The elites then have to find and deputize people to do the murdering in order to get the tone and make the purge about their goal of killing the poor. Because, as Bregman makes a pretty clear case for, humans don't like killing each other. In fact, looking for cases from ancient history to modern day, you see a consistent pattern of humanity being cooperative, collaborative, and sympathetic more than anything else. In more fact, it might be the thing that defined the success of the human species. In the book, Bregman discusses a theory based on comparative anatomy that what makes humans distinct from our other hominid cousins looks suspiciously similar to the changes other animals make when we domesticate them. They keep childlike features. The part of our brains related to sensing danger and threat shrinks, and our faces get more expressive to communicate each other's emotions better. Humans are puppers. We're just cute little doggos. The theory is literally called Homo puppy. This comes through with some immediate big questions, though. How do you explain the horrible things humans do to each other? The genocides, the colonialism, the not typing GLHF at the beginning of a match. At the core, humans have to be prodded a lot to make us do terrible things, and the way it works has to do with psychology, institutions, and economics. Transition to next book. I think the ideas of humankind are a great basis for understanding the anarchism and communism that basically make human civilization possible, and that the terrors and horrors of the modern world come from the enclosure of our resources and connections by governments and private institutions out to control as much of humanity as possible. So, this next topic sets out to answer a question that might be the source of why so many of the breadtube norms of video essays don't quite get to the heart of many subjects. It's because of a little sentence I keep in my head all the time when trying to write or discuss even the worst people in the world. People do things for reasons. The reasons might be bad, their logic a twisted knot of inconsistencies, but it's honestly shocking how often when I think about ideological opponents or the powerful people who make our lives a living hell, I don't consider this simple phrase. This doesn't mean making excuses for people or anything, but I do find that it's a little shallow when I see a big takedown of a shitty person and never pause to ask why they're shitty. And I found a good way to interrogate this question in the book Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me, by Karl Tavris and Elliot Aronson. Again, it shouldn't surprise people, but nobody, not your Ben Shapiro's, your Elon Musk's, or even your Richard Spencer, consider themselves bad people. When even they dehumanize others, get wealthy off the suffering of others, spread toxic ideas, or even bear partial responsibility for inspiring mass shooters. This all comes from the psychological theory of cognitive dissonance. The idea behind it is that if someone's actions and idea of a good, social, helpful person are out of sync, we get really uncomfortable. This erodes our psyche and is a source of acute mental stress. Good for us and bad for humanity sometimes, we are really, really good at reinterpreting things to address that cognitive dissonance and maintain our personal positive self-concept. This psychological phenomenon explains many strange beliefs and ideologies that dot the discourse space. In a world where institutions make the basic needs of survival contingent on exploitation, cruelty, and ruthlessness, we will construct entire philosophies about why those people are benefiting from our benevolent colonization, or why people who look like that are biologically inferior, or that all of this cruelty and exploitation is necessary for innovation and material abundance. These aren't cool, rational ideas built from the stark physical realities of their world. They're justification systems to make our current situation make sense with us acting in a moral and just fashion. Why this is useful is that it explains a lot of conspiracy theories. It explains radicalization and why debates are never, ever, 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 ever going to work. No matter how many Nazis you have calmly spread their ideology to your Twitch audience, their self-preserving beliefs won't budge if you just say the right facts and logic at them, because these aren't ideas made of facts and logic. We've found over and over again that the people who get out of these loops usually do so because they find their own way out. Derek Black, the son of the creator of the neo-Nazi website Stormfront, who hosted a neo-Nazi radio show for years, left the far right because of many interactions and the work of insanely patient Jews and people of color who showed him a way out. And I don't think the reason we got this idea is accidental. We don't reduce people to objects of evil and badness instinctually. We are, after all, hardwired to be sympathetic, understanding, and gracious, as I mentioned earlier, so this kind of punishment-based thinking is something we learned, and we learned it from states. And that brings us to the source of much conflict, from the geopolitical struggles between countries to small, intimate ones between people. For hundreds, if not thousands of years plus, we have been under the heels of authorities and institutions with a focus on control of resources, control of workers, control of you. The main tool these institutions, whether you call them states, warlords, corporations, or whatnot, is some form of violence. But people in these institutions are also people, and thus they need to develop systems of belief to explain why their use of violence is justified. We've already discussed the ideologies created to justify it, but there's a process to specifically conflict that they weaponize to use violence. Step 1 of a conflict: figure out which party is at fault. Who is the abuser? Who is the victim? Step 2, once defined, the abuser is then a justified party for violence, whether it be in the form of imprisonment, shunning, or literal physical injury or death. This idea comes from the book Conflict is Not Abuse by Sarah Schulman, but I put a bit of my own anarchist stank on it. States using violence to achieve their ends has trained humanity to see retributive justice, or getting even, or whatever euphemism you want to use for the act of hurting another who had hurt people, as the default method of resolving conflict. But if you peer into not all, but a lot of these conflicts, you find a situation much more complex than a simple narrative allows you to have. There's often piles of context, preceding events, situational factors, and structural issues that get to this seemingly irreconcilable situation. Because I said earlier, people do things for reasons, which is a line from this book. Schulman argues, and I agree, that these are times when we need to be careful. We need to be putting on our detective hat and see the conflict from all sides with all its dirty nuance, and resist the urge we've learned from a world of top-down hierarchies to build a narrative of one side being a victim and one side being an abuser, and see the things that happened to get to this place. And at that point, you can figure out how to disentangle the issues that got us there. It's a harder process with a lot of confrontations with difficult emotions and complicated circumstances, but it is the only way that doesn't just make one side feel like they can enact justified violence and one side failing to learn from their actions. But this doesn't require a state to intervene in the middle as an arbiter of who is worthy of punishment. It takes away the role of the state of police, of militaries to enforce the authority of the state in even the most intimate of conflicts. But if humans are so helpful and kind, what was the set of forces that created these structures that make us act against our innate friendly nature? It would be really easy to say, as Jean-Jacques Rousseau said, that society shapes humanity to do horrible things. Well, society is made up of humans, so what's the deal there? And it turns out there are forces that shape the dynamics of human history and the way we relate to each other, from the big to the very small, and it can all be simply described in a quick, breezy 3,000 pages. This is going to be a very odd section of my human nature lesson because it's really about how humans are shaped by fundamentally non-human forces, or at least forces that are outside of an individual's control for the most part. And it's from a book that I honestly don't recommend you read, or at least read directly. It's the Mac Daddy of them all. Capital. Karl Marx's seminal work is probably the most important set of theories to understand if you want to understand how humanity became what it is now, and potentially where it's going. I am still a historian somewhat, and historians will immediately cringe if you talk about using the past to predict the future. That's just our ick, so I'm going to try and avoid that part. So I don't imagine many people need an introduction to Karl Marx, but let me give you the very fast rundown. Karl Marx was a German philosopher, an economist, a historian, a sociologist, a political theorist, a journalist, and a socialist revolutionary whose ideas and theories formed the basis of Marxism. He is best known for his influential works including the Communist Manifesto, which he co-authored with Friedrich Engels, and Capital, or Das Kapital. Marx's ideas have had a profound impact on various fields, including economics, sociology, political science, and history. And his works have inspired numerous political movements and revolutions around the world. Despite the controversial nature of his ideas and their interpretations, Marx remains one of the most influential and widely studied thinkers in modern history. Marx had a lot of frustration with the socialists of his day, claiming they lacked a theoretical understanding of their politics, merely reacting to the daily injustices of capitalism while not understanding their true causes. He pointed out how groups like the Luddites, while fighting for their livelihoods, were ultimately misguided in their plan to uninvent the Industrial Revolution in order to restore an artisan economy. Marx, through an excruciatingly detailed analysis of how the capitalist economy works, realized that in many ways the way our economy, politics, and even religions and social organizations look are almost emergent properties of the sheer nuts and bolts of how we make, move, and consume stuff. Feudalism, with its system of landlords and peasants, with deeds to land and wars over territory defining the period, makes a lot more sense when you interpret it through the lens of the importance of land in a primarily agricultural economy. Under capitalism, it's the factories, mills, rail lines, and the like that fuel the economy, putting those in control of those things in power, and the struggle being over those things. He also realized that as our methods of converting human labor into stuff improved, people's work didn't get less intense or work weeks any shorter. This is because as long as the amount of time one person needed to work to survive began to be less than the time they had, society would organize into classes. A class that works, and a class that owns what Marx called the means of production. The things you need to make the stuff, the land you farm, the tools you use, etc., etc. So a class that works and a class that exploits the labor of those workers. Sometimes they were god kings, sometimes they were nobles, sometimes they were CEOs. But it's not just as simple as that, because Marx also wrote about how culture, society, institutions, what he called superstructure, would develop around these power relations, creating structures designed to reinforce and justify these unequal power relations. He argued that this is the fundamental function to governments, religions, social castes, and the like. For the record, this is an absurdly simplified version of all of these theories. 3,000 pages, remember? But Marx speculated that when these means of production began to change in big ways, and that superstructure built on top of that was out of sync with the next organization of power relations, you'd have periods of revolution. The one Marx would write about is the capitalist class as it began to hold power over the aristocratic class. They built their own superstructure and systems of justification for their power to counter the old one. This is the divine right of kings against liberalism. And these revolutions happened, the most famous being the American and French revolutions. Now, there's obviously piles of nuance here, but it does explain the broad strokes of historical change. All of these states of affairs had some sort of internal contradiction at their core. For capitalists, it's that they require people to have money to buy the products in order for them to get profit. But for them to maximize profits, and in a competitive market, profit rates are always falling, so you kind of have to do this, you need to ensure as little money goes to your employees as possible. These contradictions drive the horrors of our modern day. Marx argued that as the amount of labor time needed to produce commodities began to approach zero, these contradictions would get worse, and that at some point it would snap, that people would develop a new ideological concept in opposition to the current one. And yes, what I am saying is that the problem of capitalism is that eventually you run out of other people's money. Eventually, inevitably, a period of revolution would follow. Though at this time, as industrialization moves towards something looking like post-scarcity, the next phase doesn't really have a room for a working and exploiting class. In such a state, governments and social inequalities would no longer have a reason to exist. This state is what Marx called communism. And all the communist countries we've seen in history have been trying to find different political paths to getting there. So who knows when we'll get there, but you know, every day it's a getting closer. So, just to get everyone onto the same page, my take is that humans are generally nice, egalitarian, they share things, and they want to help each other out. The reason the world sucks is because in order to justify inequality in our society, we've developed massive power structures to force things to stay the way they are. And to survive it, we build ideologies, governments, religions, and retributive justice to keep us from realizing we might in fact be the baddies. Now, if you'll have me, I'd like to cook for a little bit. Tristan, me, hey, hi, has been thinking about these ideas for most of my life. I drank the waters of life and became politically active when I was younger than the average person who gets into this stuff. I've studied a lot of governing systems and philosophies and have just had a lot of late nights smoking weed with my other overeducated friends over the years. I think that the best philosophy for governance comes from the Bantu concept of Ubuntu. There's not a perfect translation for the concept, but the closest would be, I am because you are. The idea is that there's a fundamental dependence that humans have on each other, and it is so deep, and our indebtedness to each other is so profound and impossible to quantify that we really shouldn't try. This is why money is such a vulgar thing to me. Even if you should actually go to patreon.com/stepbackhistory, please, oh my God. Please. But this indebtedness we all have to each other isn't just a prompt to express a sense of gratitude. It's a duty. The key to humanity's survival has always been our cooperation and helpfulness, and we owe it to each other to do what we can. And I don't mean this in an empty sense. You have a duty to keep the streets clean, to shovel your elderly neighbor's driveway, to hold the door open for someone, because it's their duty to make sure you're taken care of. And in many ways, the worst things that humans do stem from the fact that we've spent a very long time outsourcing this duty to others. We've given over our job to institutions that don't see faces and names but demographics and statistics. And to justify their existence, these institutions have a life of their own, always expanding mission creep to new domains. So they convince us to hand more of it over, that companies will take care of the world, that governments will help out your neighbors, that they will be the thing you can depend on to keep us from destroying each other. And like, I don't have like a concrete set of prescriptions yet, but I do think that anything we do to take away our human duty from inhuman institutions and directly bring it to each other is a step in the right direction. How to do that in a world with electricity grids and nuclear power plants and such is a different question, and one I think we have got a lot of intellectual work to do. Mostly I think we need to fundamentally redevelop a lot of these things because everything that we have now has been developed in a social structure of highly centralized, authoritarian social organization. And those factors shape what physical technologies and infrastructure systems that we can even conceive of, let alone implement. What we might think up when our best minds aren't beholden to next quarter profits or satisfying a grant committee is a very fun speculative exercise. I know, I actually have thought about writing a science fiction novel about it. So yeah, human duty. Duty. That's the thing I'm going with. Cooking, over. Hey, I need to talk to you about something, and it's important. Over the years, as I've brought light to so many crucial topics that the world needs to know about, I've realized that the stories we tell and the communities we build have power. Power to shape our understanding of the world in profound ways. What's impossible and what's inevitable are often just down to a matter of narrative and community. That's why I'm coming to you today with a request to join me on Nebula, a streaming service that means a little more than just entertainment. It's a place where creators like myself can share our most authentic, impactful work the world needs to see, and where viewers like you can be part of something truly special. A lot of work goes into a step back video. Don't let my atrocious editing fool you. I can't count how many times it has been 3 a.m. and I'm hunched over my desk, eyes straining from the relentless glow of that computer screen as I try to put the finishing touches on a step back script or edit or something. I love it, but it's a lot. In the middle of the night, though, things get quiet, and it gives me time to reflect. And in this project, I've been reflecting on the incredible journey that we've been on together and how much my understanding of human nature has grown through our conversations and shared experiences. You see, Nebula has been a critical companion on this journey, empowering me to create videos and projects that dive deep into the human experience. I remember, for example, when I first started working on far-right extremism back in 2001, and how that grew the channel, but really hurt when it came to demonetization, age gating of my videos, and really just continuing to make this crucial stuff. The support and freedom I felt when I joined Nebula allowed me to keep exploring the topic in a way that wouldn't have been possible anywhere else. It was a turning point for me, and I couldn't have done it without you. So when I think about Nebula, I see a vibrant community of creators and viewers who are passionate about exploring new ideas and pushing boundaries. It's a place where we can come together, challenge our assumptions, and grow in ways that just a few years ago would have seemed impossible. And so I'm thrilled to share that Nebula has recently undergone a major redesign, making it easier than ever for you to find the perfect video that resonates with your interests. Step Back is now part of the culture category, alongside incredible creators like Sarah Zed and H. Bomber Guy, who are all working to explore the world through the lens of some nugget of cultural production. It's a community I'm proud to be part of, and one I know you'll love. And that's not even getting to the fact that we have a whole ass news section now. We realized that so many Nebula creators were covering world events and giving context to headlines we scroll past on social media, that we wanted to create a system for taking that responsibility a little more seriously. To that extent, there's a new Nebula original series, War Room, from the team behind Real Life Lore. Each month, they dive into the major news and developments from ongoing wars and conflicts from around the world, providing the context and analysis you need to stay informed. And I was honestly blown away by the first episode on the death of Alexei Navalny and the ongoing war in Gaza. It's exactly the kind of deep, nuanced reporting that makes Nebula so special and exactly what you're looking for. And that's just the beginning. I guess this is a little bit of an announcement, but as part of my next phase of my career, I'm in the process of launching a new TTRPG channel called Rolling Ones, and I'm thrilled to announce that it will have a Nebula first release schedule. That means you'll be able to join me in this new life adventure that I'm going into before anyone else. I can't wait to share these stories with you and hear your thoughts and reactions. Of course, none of this would be possible without your support. As I transition out of full-time work on Step Back, I've been reflecting on how much this community that we've built means to me and how grateful I am for your encouragement and understanding. When you subscribe to Nebula, you're not just getting access to incredible videos and podcasts, but directly supporting creators like myself and enabling us to keep pushing boundaries and exploring new ideas. And if you really wanted to go above and beyond, I have to tell you about the lifetime membership option. When you sign up for a $300 lifetime membership, you're not just supporting Nebula and its creators, but investing in the future of storytelling and community building. Your support is what makes incredible projects like Jesse Gender's upcoming film Identities possible. And I know that Identities is something that many of you are excited about. It's Jesse Gender, it has John Delancey, Q himself. What more could you possibly want as a Step Back viewer? And when you sign up for Nebula using my link, you're getting that access, and you're joining this movement of people who believe in the power of storytelling to change lives and shape the world around us. You're supporting creators who are pushing boundaries, who are taking risks, creators who are working every day to build a better future for all of us. So what do you say? Will you join me on this journey? Will you stand with me and the incredible community of creators and viewers on Nebula? I hope you will, because I truly believe that together we can make things that seem impossible an inevitability. Use the link in the description or the pinned comment or scan this QR code to sign up for Nebula to either purchase a lifetime membership or get 40% off an annual membership. Let's start building something amazing together. I can't wait to see where this journey takes us, and I'm so grateful to have you by my side every step of the way. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for your support, your encouragement, and your friendship. Let's do this together. Now, why don't you say we get back to the video? I have felt a little bit of nagging guilt over the last few years. I've gotten emails and DMs asking how I cover all of these dark topics and stay mentally healthy. And sometimes the answer is I don't. The Rwanda video, for example, especially took a lot out of me. I could feel my flame dim researching that video. And I also get comments on my videos using my content to reflect on how humans are evil or even worse, that we're doomed. And after 8 years of making these videos, I want to say loud and unequivocally, I disagree. I honestly do not believe humanity is doomed. I literally think humans will be here in 100, 200, 1,000 years. We may have some pretty big bumps and scrapes along the way, but we will be here. And we will keep building, progressing, loving, fighting, and dying. And I don't think that the cause of making the world a better place is a lost one. Do I think that we will see the revolution in my lifetime? Probably not. Maybe, hopefully, but in all likeliness, But I do think I will see victories I never thought possible. And that in broad strokes, I will die in a world better than I came into. And I do not see this as a defeat. I think back on the people who built the great cathedrals of Europe. These buildings took centuries to build. There were carpenters and masons who worked their entire life on a project that they did not see the beginning of, and were not alive when it was completed. But they still did it. They saw the big picture, and we can always look back and see the stones they placed and the stones their children built on top of them. And I think this is about the time that we circle back to talk about this being the last Step Back video, with me doing it full time. I think we made something really great here, and we'll continue to do so. I can't financially keep making videos all day and still pay the bills. But I still got things I want to say, and I know people still want to hear it, so I'm not going away, I'm just slowing down. I mentioned this back in December on Tristan Won't Shut Up, but the update here is that I do have a little bit of an idea of what the next step is going to be, and luckily for you, well, some of you, it means more YouTube videos. I picked up a job for a small marketing company that specializes in helping out small TTRPG producers market their games. And since videos on white supremacists in the 80s is not necessarily the best portfolio to show to clients, I'm starting a TTRPG YouTube channel. I will make an announcement in the coming weeks, but yeah, it's exciting, and if it does well, who knows what might come out of that. I think doing this big stuff is important, but also making video essays about a hobby that builds those intimate bonds of friendship and camaraderie is also important for laying down some stones for that cathedral. And if you're a Nebula subscriber, you'll get those stones one video early too. And if I can accomplish one thing with this video, it's to remind you of your human duty. I am literally asking you right now to lay down some stones if you're able. Help a neighbor, make a friend happy, do a good thing, because studies have shown that putting that kind of stuff out there does have a proliferating effect on the people you do it for. And tell me about it when you do. See you soon. All right, that is a video.